Hey guys, welcome to Christina Cakes It. I'm Christina, and in this episode, I'm going to show you how to make a DIY smash cake with 5 different decorating ideas. So I'm really excited to share this episode with you guys because over the last few years, I've had a number of friends reach out to me asking just for some help and some ideas in making their own smash cakes. And these friends all live out of the area. Otherwise, I would definitely make a smash cake for them. I'd be happy to do it. And because I've had so many different friends reach out to me, I thought it'd be a great idea just to make a tutorial about it because I know that there's just probably a lot of people out there who are trying to make their own smash cake, and I want to make sure that I give you guys some helpful tips in actually building up your smash cake and preparing the cake appropriately. And then also I have a lot of different decorating ideas that I think you guys are really going to enjoy learning about. So before I get to the different ways to decorate a smash cake, it's super important that we have our cake constructed correctly and that everything is level and that we have a perfect canvas for our smash cake when we're ready to frost and decorate. So I'm going to show you guys exactly how to build a perfect cake. So I'm starting with my already done cake layers, and if you need a tutorial on this, I do have an episode for my go-to vanilla cake recipe that shows you exactly how to make the actual cake layers. So these have been out of the pan and they're cool, but you can see they are not level. So first thing is we do want to make sure that our cakes are room temperature. Our layers are room temperature when we're working with them. You can make them ahead of time and freeze them, but when you're actually doing this, we want them room temperature. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to level our cakes. You guys can see that these are not flat. And so we're just going to take a knife and cut off the cake dome. So you definitely want to do this before you start building your smash cake. So I should also mention that I used my go-to vanilla recipe and I just added 3/4 cups of sprinkles to make it funfetti. So that's what you guys are seeing here. So leveling all cake layers. Cake that I'm working with is a 6-inch cake, so all the cakes, I'll give you details when I decorate, but they're all going to either be 6 inches or 4-inch cakes, because when you're doing a smash cake for a baby, they're so little they do not need these giant cakes, so it actually probably would look kind of weird. So my cakes are leveled and now I'm ready to start putting the cake together. So I have a batch of American buttercream here, and the full recipe for this is also down below. All of the cakes that I'm gonna be decorating are using just standard American buttercream. It's the easiest to make and it's pretty sturdy, so that's what I often am using. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of American buttercream and I'm going to place some on my cake board. And I'm gonna put my first cake layer flat side down. And I want to make sure that it's centered. And what that buttercream is going to do is it's going to make sure the cake isn't sliding around. And you want to give your cake layer a firm press. And what we're trying to do is press the air out of our cake. If there is air in the cake and it hasn't settled, your cake could bulge, which is just not an attractive look. So next I am going to go ahead and start frosting this layer. And generally, if you read this, people say about 1/4 inch thick. I wouldn't say you have to be completely exact, but you definitely don't want too much or too little frosting. But it does not have to be completely exact. Just a thick layer to cover the layer. And a little bit's gonna come out the side, which is totally fine. And I'm using an offset spatula to frost this. So the next cake layer, I am going to actually put flat side up because we want that top, that nice flat top. And again, I'm gonna press down pretty firmly to get that air out of my cake. And I'm also going to look at my cake eye level to see if it's level. I actually have a cake level that I put on here. If you have one, you can definitely use your level to make sure that you know, it's perfectly straight, but you can also just eyeball it. So add another layer of frosting, same thing, a pretty thick layer. And I'm just spreading it around with my offset spatula. It's going to come out of the sides. No biggie. And then this cake that I'm building is obviously 3 6-inch layers, so 3 layers high. I think this is the perfect size for a smash cake. But you guys are gonna see a lot of different sizes, so you can decide what you like. So pressing down, helping to get my cake with no bulges. And I'm eyeballing it, and I can see it's actually sticking up too much on this side, so I'm gonna press it down. So after you have your layers stacked, we're gonna do what's called a crumb coat. And this is just a very thin layer of frosting. And this is the layer we put before we actually put our final layer on. And it's just like what it says. It traps the crumbs of the cake. So when you have like fresh cake layers, it's totally normal and expected that when you frost, you're gonna get crumbs in it, but we don't want that for our smash cake or any cake. I mean, you actually need a crumb coat for every cake you're decorating. And so we're gonna start with our very thin layer just to trap the crumbs. So you can see why an offset spatula is really handy here as I'm frosting. I frosted plenty of cakes with just like butter knives, but if you're making your DIY smash cake, you are gonna want an offset spatula. So after I put my layer of icing for my crumb coat, I do need to smooth it out. And you're gonna see, I actually have a few different bench scrapers here. So I have my metal one, I have my plastic one. I actually like my plastic one just fine, but you are gonna wanna make sure that you have a bench scraper when you're making a DIY smash cake. Or as I said, recommended really for any time you're trying to decorate any cake. So I'm just going to hold my bench scraper parallel to the cake, and I'm scraping off the excess frosting, and my crumb coat is a thin layer and it's supposed to have all these crumbs in it. That's its job, so it's not gonna look super pretty at this point. So I'm just scraping away my excess. And it's important to wipe off the scraper after all that frosting has gathered. So you're wiping your bench scraper in between. And now I'm just gonna go along the top of the cake and smooth out this frosting as well. So this isn't perfect, but the better job that we do on our crumb coat, the smoother the frosting is gonna look when we put our final coat on. So I have my crumb coat ready. Oh, sorry. So I have my crumb coat done, and at this point you have a couple different options. What I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna put this in the fridge for about 15 minutes to chill, because you want this buttercream firm. That's the secret to the final smooth layer of frosting. So you can put it in the fridge for 15 minutes. Another option is you could actually let this sit out for like 6 to 8 hours at room temperature prior to putting it into the fridge to chill it for a few minutes. That's even going to help ensure even more that our cake is going to settle and there's not going to be any bulges. You could also pop it into the fridge overnight if you wanted to come back and decorate the next day, just as long as your cake is chilled before we put on the next coat of frosting. So I'm going to put this in the fridge for 15 minutes and then continue on. So cake just came out of the fridge. It was in there for about 15 minutes. And now I'm gonna add another really thick layer of frosting. So after I add my thick layer of frosting, I'm giving it a first pass, just kind of taking away all that excess. So now I'm gonna take my bench scraper and I'm gonna start at the top, just smoothing it out. This is where having a turntable comes in really handy. So I definitely recommend investing in a turntable if you're gonna make a smash cake as well. So I smooth out my top, and I'm just going to take my scraper and put it parallel against the cake, just like we did with our crumb coat. And I'm gonna start scraping away the excess. And if there are some areas that are patchy, I'm just gonna add a little bit more frosting and continue to smooth. And I'm smoothing out the top again, just where some of that excess frosting has gathered. So for the purposes of our smash cake, this does not need to be completely perfect because these are all gonna get covered with another layer of frosting. So at this point, I'm pretty happy with it because I know it's gonna get covered. If I was going to just do a plain basic frosted cake, I would put this whole thing in the fridge again for 15 minutes and add another layer of frosting. And what that's gonna do is ensure that nothing is patchy and no parts of the cake are showing through. So this is how we prep our smash cake to be decorated. And every single cake that you see in this tutorial have been made up to this point. So all the cakes have been crumb coated, frosted, and have another layer of frosting, with the exception of the naked cake for obvious reasons. So this cake is ready to be decorated. All of my cakes have been chilled, so I'm gonna put this one back in the fridge again until it's actually ready for me to decorate. And the first cake that I'm going to show you is going to be a basic naked cake. To me, this is the easiest one, so if I was like brand new baker and just doing this for the first time, this is probably the design I would go with. So you guys can see this is the only cake that I haven't crumb coated because we need this for the design. And this particular idea actually came to me, our friend Allison actually reached out to me because her little baby Audrey was turning one, and she sent me a picture of a cake that looked like this, and I thought it was so cute, so I decided to make it for the channel. So all I'm gonna do is I'm starting with my American buttercream that I dyed just a really light shade of pink using Americolor Soft Pink, very popular in the cake world. Again, the recipe for the frosting that I use for every single cake is down below in the description, just American buttercream. And for this naked cake, you probably just need one batch of the frosting recipe that I've included. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of my buttercream frosting and apply a very thin layer. Like, that's the key to a naked cake, is you just need a very thin layer. So I'm gonna start at the top, and it's by no means perfect. And I'm just going to go around the cake again with the thin layer. And we want the sides to show through, so of course I did not trim my cake layers. We want that color to show. But as I'm frosting the cake, I'm pressing in a little bit because I want to fill in the gaps between the cake layers. So I've applied my thin layer of frosting. I'm going back through to any areas that I just feel like aesthetically might need a little bit more frosting. And I'm kind of just smoothing with my offset spatula as I go. I am going to do another scrape, like pass with a scraper, but this just kind of helps it go along the way. So now that I have my first layer, I am gonna take my bench scraper and I'm just gonna scrape this down, just really based on how I think it looks good. So this trend is so popular, and of course we want a little bit of the cake exposed. This particular way to decorate is also nice because it uses very little frosting. So I'm just smoothing out the top. And you're gonna see that your cake board is going to have a little bit of frosting on it. And you can go through and take some off now. But you're gonna wanna take a paper towel and just dampen a little bit of it, and you can scrape away even more so your cake board is clean. And then for this particular design, I'm going to add an artificial flower. And I'm just gonna stick that on the cake where I think it looks nice. And that's it for the naked cake. It's so simple. So this is the one that I would do if you are going for like the boho look and you're very new to cake decorating. So after my cakes are decorated, I am going to pop them into the fridge. My cakes generally live in the fridge overnight. It's the best way I find to store them rather than leaving them out. So the second technique I'm going to show you is the Rosette Cake. This is probably the most popular smash cake design that's out there, and it's really easy to make. So for this cake, you do need a Wilton tip 1M. This is the tip that's going to work the best. And I'm just going to fill my piping bag. So I like to use a cup just because it makes it a little bit easier and less messy. And for this shade of frosting, so it's my American buttercream with the recipe listed below. This is Americolor in Sky Blue, so really pretty. And one thing to know about rosettes is they take a lot of frosting. So I would actually make a batch and a half of the recipe that's listed below. And the other thing to know when you're making a rosette cake is you want your frosting not to be too warm, so it can kind of warm up as you're going, like from your hand, which will make the rosette slide off. So if that happens to you, just pop your frosting into the fridge. So stop and let it chill for a few minutes. This cake has been crumb coated, and obviously I did use the same shade of blue that is going to be my rosettes. This is good because if there's any gaps, then the blue is going to show and not the white. So because this is a 3-layer cake, I'm gonna have 3 layers of roses. So that's the general rule of thumb. And I'm gonna start at the bottom of my cake. And I'm gonna put a little pressure and just swirl around. And if my icing tip starts to get clogged, I'm just gonna wipe that excess away. If you get a rosette in there that you don't like that one I just did, I'm just gonna scrape it off. And all that's gonna get covered, so I'm not worried about it. So like I said, rosettes take so much frosting, so you're definitely gonna have to refill your piping bag, or you can buy several different 1M tips so you can have like lots of different piping bags ready. So I'm ready to go onto the second row. I'm going to stagger, so I don't want them like exactly on top of one another. I'm gonna start it like in the middle. And so I'm just going to eyeball it here, and exact same method, swirl it around. And now I'm ready for my final row. And same thing, same technique. So after we're done with the sides of our cake, we are ready for the top. So I'm done piping the rosettes on the sides. I'm ready for the top, and this is actually a little bit easier. So we're just gonna start on the outside, working in, and it's the same motion. So that's it for our rosette cake. Super simple, and I am going to put this into the fridge because I do want these to really firm up and set. All right, so the next technique is Ombre, and this has been around for a while, super popular and very, very simple. So if you are a beginner, this is definitely a technique that you could easily master successfully. So this is a little cake. This is 4 layers that are 4 inches, which I think is also a really great size for a smash cake. And this cake just got out of the fridge. It has been chilling, and I have made 3 different shades of purple that I'm going to be using for this cake. So I am going to roughly split this cake into thirds. Definitely does not have to be exact. And I'm just kind of scoring it. This is just for me. So that I know how high to frost. Ooh, that was really crooked. And I'm just going to take my offset spatula, and I'm going to start adding a thick layer of frosting. go in with my second lightest shade and apply a thick layer above. And then of course my lightest shade at the top. And I'm gonna of course frost the top of the cake as well. And I'm gonna take my scraper and I'm going to just start smoothing out the top of the cake, and then I'm gonna work my way down around the sides. So I'm holding it vertical and I'm just turning my turntable and gathering that excess frosting. And I'm gonna keep going around and adding bits of frosting where there are like patchy spots, but I'm making sure to clean my scraper between every pass. So after I have gone through and I've scraped away my ombre design, I'm pretty happy with it. A trick is to take the offset spatula and its metal, and I heated it over the stove so it's really hot, and I'm just going to take it and smooth out the cake. This is just a trick to help really make it look smoother, more polished. I do this on a lot of my cakes. And when I'm happy with my ombre, I'm gonna go ahead and put this into the fridge as well. So the next cake design I'm gonna show you is one of my favorites. It's a really simple cake that adds a lot of color if that's what you're going for. And for this cake, you will need quite a bit of frosting, so I would recommend making a batch and a half to 2 batches of the recipe below. And we're gonna need various piping tips. So I have prepared a ton of icing here and already filled my bags, and I'll make sure to let you guys know each piping tip that I'm using. So I'm gonna start with my Wilton tip 1M, and I'm just gonna pipe rosettes just randomly around my cake. And I'm going to continue piping along the top of my cake as well. So next I'm taking the Wilton petal tip 104, and I'm gonna pipe basically just like a little ruffle along the sides of my rosettes. So I have the wider end of the tip next to the rosette, and I'm just going to add a little pressure and kind of just move my hand up and down, making a ruffle. And you're going to want to make sure to clear your piping tip if a little bit of excess frosting starts to like clog the opening. And now I'm just going to start piping in little stars in the blank spaces. And I'm starting with an Ateco tip 866. So this is just a large open star tip. You don't have to use this one. You can use any open star tip that you can find. I like the Ateco because they come in sets of just like a bunch of different sizes, and I use these a lot. And I'm gonna add more dots with an Ateco 865. and I'm actually going to add another layer on top of the ruffle just to make it stand out a little bit more. This is like not completely necessary, I just think it makes it look a little bit better. So after I'm done piping all of this on my cake, which I think looks really cute, just really fun and colorful, I'm gonna put it in the fridge to set as well, just like every other cake that I've made. All right, so this next cake that I'm gonna show you is really simple and really fun. So I actually do this design a lot when I'm kind of short on time, but I want something like really interesting and unique. So spatula painting has definitely become popular in the cake decorating world, and it's really simple. So I'm gonna be using just a bunch of different rainbow colors for this smash cake. And you can see, if you look closely, you can actually see I started a different design on this cake and I didn't like it. And I just took off that layer of buttercream and I'm starting with this different design. So that's the beauty of just cake decorating in general. Oftentimes if you don't like it, you can just totally start over by just taking off that outer layer of frosting and re-crumb coating. So this whole cake's getting covered, so I don't mind that there are, you know, little peaks of this teal that are showing through. So to get started, I just have all my different shades of buttercream, and I'm using a small offset spatula. You can get these on Amazon. They're relatively cheap and just essential for this cake design. So I'm just gonna start by getting a tiny bit of frosting and pressing it into my cold cake. So this design, I think, originally came from a cake artist named Catherine Sabbath. She's huge in the cake world and on Instagram. Super talented Australian baker. I'm doing the same thing along the top, just making little, I don't know what these are called, like little swooshes. And when I'm ready to switch colors, I'm making sure to clean off my spatula in between. And when you're doing this, you can definitely overlap a little bit. You're actually gonna want to do that because you don't want any of your white cake to show through. At this point I have a lot of my cake covered, but I know there's still quite a bit of white. But at this point, I'm going to put this into the fridge for 10 to 15 minutes because I want this layer to crust, because I'm gonna go back in and overlap. And if they mix together too much, it just doesn't look good. So into the fridge so this will harden just a little bit before I put the next layer of color on. So the cake just came out of the fridge, and like if I touch this, these are hardened, which is what I want. So I'm just gonna keep adding more color. Now I'm gonna go ahead and start going back in and repeating some of my colors. Just like when I take a step back, I can see there's some spots where I wanna go back and add in like maybe some blues and some pinks and some purples. So definitely like with this cake, it's about like what you feel like looks nice. And there's really no like right or wrong way to do it. Put this in the fridge just one more time before I fill in just a little bit of white that's left. So this looks about done to me. I might go back in and touch up a few more spots later after like I kind of look at it a little bit more. But you can see like this is just like a really fun design. I think it would look so cute in like the Smash Cake photo shoot, or obviously at the Smash Cake like for the first birthday party. So this is like a really easy design and really fun to make also just as a decorator. So this one definitely top of the list as far as designs that I just really like. So again, I'm gonna pop this into the fridge and most likely I'll probably touch up like just a few more spots. Okay, so all of my Smash Cakes are complete and each one turned out super cute, and there are definitely a lot of different options for you guys out there depending on the look that you're going for. And I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to my channel.